Aloha. This video, I wanted to jump off the last video and give some up to the date examples of what I was explaining in the Netflix algorithm or coding reality perspective. But something I mentioned in there, which was the, for lack of a better term to focus on this video, the public shaming of the indigenous people. So specifically so-called black people, how it's a known thing that a black man has to die in the movie. Like you know, like, where does that come from? Why is that a normal thing? Is it just a coincidence? Obviously not. This exists to affect you certain ways. So the same way that the internet and social media and the, what is it called, the official narrative is designed to affect you in a certain way. So what kinds of ways are there? I went through explaining it in the last video more deeply, but I wanted to focus on this one specifically because this is a good example. Like, Netflix is a macro example of the trending page. So the trending page is like it's a way to make you think, a way to make you focus on something. So now that you have that understood, what are the things that it wants you to focus on? So one of the main things, or two of the main things that it wants you to focus on that I mentioned in many different videos, is that so-called not white people there's something wrong with them. There's something, they're primitive, savage, they have bad genetics, they're violent. They don't have any family values. They're not really equipped for Western civilization. They are hypersexualized, oversexualized. Like the curves in their body makes them too sexualized, like too sexual. They are. Their intellect is less than that of so-called white people, just like the intellect of Asian people is more, or white or Chinese people is more, is higher than white people. See, they have to play that role too. So that gives so-called white people a pass for saying for maintaining their supremacy, because they artificially humble themselves by saying that they are dumber than Chinese people. You know what I'm saying? So this is how that game is being played. But who runs the cameras? Who runs the storyline? Who continues to play that game over and over and over again? Well, you can see what's going on. So what's going on here in this video is this is a good example, because what they're doing is they're trying to make it look like they're helping the people or expanding the consciousness of the people by sharing information that's going to make people better, be better people. They use the example of Jay Leno in reference to John Oliver. Jay Leno was the old comedy that was literally like tone deaf to its public shaming, like old school TV shows were tone deaf to their racism. Jay Leno's tone deaf to his insensitivity to, the shit that he was talking about, his public shaming. So overall, the system is tone deaf on purpose to the way it's treated the melanated people across the earth. And it's tone deaf on purpose because that tone deaf is what maintains the empire itself. Because if you start looking at the tones within the control grid, then you start to disassemble the infrastructure of the empire. So it has to maintain this overusage of white people are amazing and so-called black people are horrible people. Like I said, at the same time, they can't just say, white people are amazing. They have to say, white people are also horrible and, also dumb and also this. But, we invented Hollywood. We invented, the United States of America. So, how bad could we really be? Come on, guys. We're still the best. China, it might be smarter than us, but, China didn't make McDonald's. China didn't make Burger King. China didn't make the Independence Day. You know, China doesn't make, you know, Will Smith. You know, all this shit. So that's what this system is being played. How this system is being played. So the same way this program is claiming, so as it's talking and revealing public shaming, it's simultaneously public shaming indigenous people or melanated people or so-called black people. This in the same context that I mentioned in the last video before this video was even uploaded. I named off the names: Bill Cosby, O.J. Simpson, R. Kelly. I didn't say Jussie Smollett, but I made a video about Jussie Smollett. What's another one? You know, just the main people that they talk about all the time. And who do you think they named in this video when they were talking about public shaming? Obviously, it's a thing that they're going to have to name them. But the thing is, as they're naming them, they're public shaming them. So like as he's naming Monica Lewinsky, he's not public shaming Monica Lewinsky, which is the half of this video is an interview with Monica Lewinsky as an example of how public shaming affects an individual. So like I said, they play that role, and then they play like, oh yeah, that we're the victims here. But you're not really looking at how so-called black people have been public shamed from the beginning. These stories will never be mentioned because the biggest threat to the so-called white empire or the colonial empire or even the powers that be, because when I say the colonial empire, that's just the introduction. That's just the chapter to the power itself. Like when you talk about control, and, you know, somebody's talking about money rules the world. And, you know, one step up from that is the Federal Reserve. You know, anybody can say money rules the world. You know, a kid could say that. A high schooler could say that and know nothing about how the Federal Reserve interacts with, like, the Bohemian Grove, the underground scenes, the so-called rabbit hole, the conspiracy theories. A child could see how money rules the world, but still never understand the intricacies of how that connects, the tentacles connect to everything else. And they can spend years on going on how that connects to everything else and still not get to the roots. Still not get to the roots of that. They'll die, they'll live and die that entire lifetime and still not know why a lot of these things exist. They might get in to see what's going on, but they never get into how these things work and why this stuff works. So I wanted to share examples of how these systems play like they're the superhero, play like they're the victim, play like they're the villain, and simultaneously play the official narrative right under your nose without you even realizing what's going on. So you love it. You love the way he plays this game because, you know, it's funny, right? He's talking about Jay Leno. He's the new Jay Leno. So let's see if I can do this without picking up any. I'll put it back here. So I just wanted to show you so you don't have to watch it. Okay, so let me get this. So they talk about her. So obviously they play the stories again. So here's the Jussie Smollett. He's listing off public shaming. So obviously he mentions Kevin Hart. He's going off a list of, you know, people of public shaming. So they have to mix in black, white, as if it's balanced. But there is no balance here. So-called white people are 1/10 of the entire people on the planet. So this is how they put themselves off. Then this is why they can say, you know, call so-called black people minorities. You know, why do they have to call so-called black people minorities? Why? Is it because specifically they're minorities in the United States? No, that's a bullshit ass answer. It's a power thing. Because if they are the minorities, then who's the majority? And then they're trying to rewrite the definitions of the United States of American people. That's why the real definition of American is copper colored. So this is why the copper colored people are now called minorities. Because the new story, the new world, the new history books want to rewrite you out of the reality. So you're a minority, they're a majority, and 50 years, 100 years down the road, it will no longer be using that word anymore, because the norm will just be, it'd be dumb to say majority, but they're not going to get that far. They can only hold it so far by usage of word magic. So yeah, they mention whatever the hell his name, the guy you're looking at right now, his name. They mentioned him after he said he wanted to kill any black man that he encountered, because of he knew of somebody, a so-called black man, who raped one of his friends. So he just went out randomly, like, looking for any black man that was going to talk shit, and he was going to kill them. This is a celebrity. This is what he was really thinking, and this is what he actually said. He didn't do it, but he actually said it, so he got publicly shamed. Kevin Hart got publicly shamed for some tweets he said like 9 years ago, and this is why he was taken out of or removed himself from the Oscars hosting thing. Jussie Smollett, obviously public shaming for faking the thing that he was a part of. But you see what's going on. So they already named Kevin Hart, Jussie Smollett, and then who else was there? They named Jussie Smollett 3 times. So those 3 images that you saw were 3 different times that they named him. So this is what I'm talking about, emphasizing, like, oh, black people are more fucked up, and so they won't go into the public shaming of colonial decisions, like the psychosis of the New World mentality. They won't go into they won't shame themselves. They won't shame the empire. They won't shame their genocide. They won't shame the syphilis experiments. They won't shame the Tuskegee experiments. They won't shame Operation Northwoods. They won't shame Vietnam. They won't publicly shame the Nazis being involved with NASA. They won't publicly shame the bullshit that is the mainstream media. They won't publicly shame the white supremacy programs that are still existing, like the home terror. They won't publicly shame 9/11, like the real story of 9/11. So they have to publicly shame. So this is what I'm saying, like, all of the shit that the system, the empire itself, could be referenced for. This is the same way that R. Kelly has to be publicly shamed in reference to, or in comparison to, the Catholic Church. See, like, and they mention R. Kelly in here too. So Kevin Hart, Jussie Smollett, R. Kelly. I think R. Kelly was mentioned in here. If not, it's the same thing. But that's a big one. See, they make a movie called Spotlight, talking about the Catholic Church, put it on Netflix, but then they sweep it under the rug. Like, they never really talk about it. Joe Rogan is from Boston, has the biggest podcast in the world, and the Spotlight, the movie, was made. Like, you had Avengers, you had the Hulk. What was that dude? His name was in it. What other Rachel? Whatever name. All these other people, these big A-list people are in this movie. It's like you could spend years disassembling that and then tracing down the criminals within the Catholic Church. See, what's going on is that this nature, this beastly nature, has been normalized. And one way you can see that is that even with comedy, like, you can see this even more so with comedy. There's some kind of comedy or interactions that is specific to so-called white people. Like, people know this. Like, people who are not in their emotions know this. Like, like for example, so-called white people are way more comfortable being with like gay jokes and all that other stuff. Now, is that because not white people, so-called not so-called white people, are insecure about their masculinity? No, of course not. But that's what you've been told, because that's what so-called white people put out there. They say, "Oh, I'm just, confident with my masculinity, so I can make gay jokes all day." No, 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 no. Just because you're confident with something that seems to be feminine does not make you masculine, first. Secondly, the atmosphere of that is specific to a particular type of culture. It is not specific to us. See, because we understand the real depths and the real definitions of who and what we are. We still have a connection with nature. We are not trying to, what's the word? We have no vested interest in protecting this Roman culture, because that's what it goes back to, the Greek and Roman culture that is, has evolved into today. That Greco-Roman culture is a culture based upon like abuse, sodomy, a bunch of fucked up shit. Just like, so all the fucked up shit that has been going on since the Greco-Roman empires up until today, that shit had to be normalized. So gay or the the acceptance of the LGBT, like the pushing of the LGBT, that's to adjust from the Greco-Roman Empire of like when they used to have all those sodomy parties and all that other shit. Like that's part of it. It's also a beating down of the masculine and feminine. It's also a separating of families and culture. It's also a separating of relationships that you have. Creates instability, insecurity. Like all this shit happens on the macro scale, but on a micro scale, they're selling you what? Oh, this is about acceptance and unity and coming together and being, tolerant. No, see, they want to focus on LGBTQ tolerance because they don't want to focus on the lack of so-called tolerance in the colonial storyline dealing with race. So they have to show you how tolerant they are of certain things. So they show you how tolerant they are of what is beneficial to the healing or so-called healing mechanisms coming from the empire itself. So they will in this program, they have to victimize themselves. At the same time they are victimizing themselves, they have to make you look like shit. The same way they have to, when they are making themselves look like superheroes, they have to kill you. So in a horror movie, who saves the day? The jock and the cheerleader, they survive. All the other jocks and cheerleaders, they die. But who dies first? The black guy. So you have zero connection with that person. You're okay. So when they put that in movies, that desensitizes you from the orchestrated murder, the orchestrated genocide of so-called black people. So when the reason why they put the black man dying in a movie first all the time is because they want you to feel desensitized and they want you to be normalized with the decisions that they made of putting drugs into so-called black people's communities and guns into so-called black people's communities. So if they put drugs and guns into the communities and they haven't desensitized you to how that's fucked up for them and how they did that first, then they would go against the government. But no, since they have been desensitized with movies in a sense that they don't care if you die. And even with the local news, it's murder, arson, robberies. Like all that is to desensitize you to the even in their mind controls of the humanity. They desensitize you to the beingness, the living, like their right to live. Like once you are desensitized to their right to live, See, and taking it a step even further, you have to be desensitized to the original peoples of this land's right to live because you are stealing their land. You have to be desensitized to the owners of this land dying because once they die, you get to take over their land. So you have to be okay with them being being killed on a massive scale. So you're not going to say anything about 70-something% of Planned Parenthoods being placed in the inner cities around so-called black and brown peoples. You're not going to say shit, anything, and even in the so-called truther community, every single truth that I'm naming off right now, you're not going to hear that in the truther community. It's taboo. It's off limits because the truther community is an orchestrated, controlled truth release. It's controlled. Proof is because the truther community is based upon reacting to lies. And when you're reacting to lies, your truth is based upon the consciousness of the lies. So you're limited on the consciousness of the lies. And when you're limited to the consciousness of something else, like the lies, your truth ain't truth. Your truth is just propaganda for the lies that have been put out for you to react to in the first place. Rewind it if you want to hear that shit again, because that's rewindable. Play that shit again, because that's exactly what this is going on with this storyline right now. You need to be distracted. You need to be desensitized. We are being dehumanized. And so-called white people, or the people who are accepting this colonial new age world, are being deified. And they're doing it slick with comedy and all this other shit. Joe Rogan is the same way. He's one of the biggest perpetrators of that bullshit. So, yeah. They kill you off. It's not separated. It's not separate. It's no mistake. It's no coincidence that... You know what I'm saying. So they had Kevin Hart on here, and they said it really quick. So, you know, once it's said like that, you know, you don't know the story about Kevin Hart. Like, you don't hear his side. So when you actually listen to how he just quickly mentioned Kevin Hart, and then ball it up into, like, next to the R. Kelly stuff and next to the Jussie Smollett stuff, then you don't really know the story, and then boom, you know, you're fucked up. And obviously, you know, Hollywood's connected with the Oscars and all that. These are very slick, and they use these little, like, mentally fucked up people like John Oliver. He's just a robot. He's a robot that doesn't fucking know. And as soon as he starts saying, if he's gonna start questioning anything, if they ever, because most of them don't. The same way most so-called white people don't talk about themselves, their culture. They won't talk about that. The truther community, there is no truther community. Truther community ran by so-called white people is truthful entertainment. Truthful information entertainment. And it got shit to do with the truth of, you know, the origins of the empire itself. Like Alex Jones. What kind of fucking truth is that? Owen Benjamin. That's equivalent to John Oliver truth. Period. Anybody else saying anything different is either trying to sell you something or distract you from something. So, let's get through this. Public shaming. These arrogant little fucking pricks. Yeah, as soon as I say that, his face pops up. So yeah, so they have to talk shit about, like, these people are planted out there. Look at this guy. He looks like a Goodwill, like a Dollar Tree Ken doll. Like a fake ass Ken doll. These people are created. These are like clay figures put into society to get beat up. They're punching bags. They're like that clown, like that just gets pushed down and put back up. Who's putting them back up? The same people who's talking shit about them. You think there's a difference between John Oliver and this fucking guy, Tucker Carlson? Even his name is designed to get in your head a certain way. Tucker Carlson. What the fuck? So these individuals are out there to like I said, to make the colonial world look like superheroes, because these are the villains. That, and just the same way he does the same thing with Jay Leno. So he talks about, so at the same time that they're, you know, mentioning these people as if they're horrible people, they're also saying, you know, what they're saying. So he's saying that he called, I can't remember who he called, semi-literate, I think he was talking about Afghanistan, yeah, semi-literate primitive monkeys. And then, yeah, semi-literate primitive monkeys. Yeah, so they're talking shit at the same time. They're revealing it, but the point is, when they're like, when they say semi-literate primitive monkeys, their mainstream, like, university belief system is that you are monkeys. So they're saying that they're not evolved. So even though he's making fun of the individual who's clearly something wrong with him by calling them semi-literate primitive monkeys, what they won't say is that the accepted norm in society is to really think that you're a monkey. So what they're saying, the truth of what they're saying in normal society is that Afghanistan, people from Afghanistan are less evolved monkeys. They haven't even made it out of Monkeyville into humanity, because that's the truth of what they believe. So that keeps you from investigating the reality of what's going on in society, or like who and what you really are. So another way that they, you know, victimize themselves is to find another victim. So this is this lady who, this is fucking weird. She sued her nephew because her nephew gave her a hug and she broke her arm and she didn't have the medical bills to pay, whatever. So she had to sue the housing authority or whoever in order to get the medical bills to pay for her broken arm. But in order to get the housing authority to be named in that suit, she had to name somebody who injured her on the housing place, and so she named her nephew, and then she was named in society as the worst aunt ever, and that caught on. So John Oliver thought to use his power to clear her name, and you know, that's what they use their power for, this shit. So this is how this is what they're talking. This is like the limited consciousness of, like I was talking about, reacting. It's not about reacting. They're not going to talk about the public shame, the origins of public shaming. Where did public shaming come from? What is public shaming? What did the original public shaming, what was the original public shaming meant for in power conversations in reference to the empire? How is public shaming used to protect the empire, the standing empire? Well, they used it in this video slickly. They talk about public shaming, but they simultaneously public shamed who? So-called black people. Or not white people is better. And they use these like, the whole thing is, these individuals, look at these faces. These faces are put on your television every day to public shame you, non-white people. The way they talk, their tone, their approach, their belief in the system of so-called white supremacy, of the colonial empire, of so-called Western civilization. Their existence is to public shame you. Their very nature is public shaming you, public shaming the original people. They're lying about them having any kind of authority to say anything about what's going on is a public shaming. And he's going to public shame them. So, like Tucker Carlson, this is why he wins all of these Grammys, because they need you to believe that the system is good for you. and that you can trust these people. Where is it at? Okay, so now they're talking about, I think, her, she bribed this lady who is the aunt, if you can tell through the plastic surgery. She was the lady who bribed, or she was on Full House. She was like the aunt of Family, Full House, yeah, Full House. She was an aunt on there. So they compared her. They said she's the worst aunt ever, in comparison to the other lady who got memed as the worst aunt ever. She got labeled on this TV show to make you think that, you know, the TV shows are doing good things that's against Hollywood and so on and so forth. The TV show public shamed her, John Oliver, because she got caught bribing USC with $500,000 so that they could say that her niece or her nieces or her daughters, I can't remember who it was, I think whoever it was, somebody in her family, I think it was her nieces, whoever these girls are. She tried to bribe a USC crew coach to say that these ladies were on the crew team for USC, but they weren't really on the team. So just to make her look cool or have it on her admissions or some shit like that, whatever it was. Anyway, that happened. That bribe shit happened. And that's just what was caught. Don't think that shit doesn't happen all the time. So these are all the benefits for people who are not, I'm not even going to get into that privilege and all that other shit. But you see what I'm saying. So they went through all this, you know, focusing on how fucked up this lady is, how fucked up these young women are. That, like, you know, that whole thing, that's whole great. And you would think that they would just leave it there, right? No. What? And this is kind of like the kicker for why I made this video. She's a public figure, 1.4 million followers, the one that they tried to bribe into USC. She does YouTube stuff. She's worked for Amazon. I'm trying to catch it right now. She's worked for Amazon. She's worked for, or has been connected with all these. Damn it. I'm trying to catch it so you can see it. You can kind of see it on the bottom. Anyway. I get it now. Let me just play it so you can. Anyway, maybe it'll come up, hopefully. Oh, there it is. So she's been connected to work for these shows, or these shows, corporations, Amazon, Sephora, like all these like things. She for her YouTube thing. So this is another privilege sort of thing, obviously. So you can see how fucked up this little grouping is. Like the lady who was on Full House, bribed a USC coach, ain't even on the crew team, has 1.4 million subscribers or followers on Instagram, has a following on YouTube, has all these people following. How fucked up this group is. How fucked up that is. They're out there just like the Kardashians. And then, like at the end, when they end the video, do you think, how could they loop this back to showing how fucked up black people are? How you think, could they do that? Could they do such a thing? Yes, they can. Here they go. So this is how they can loop it back to public shaming so-called black people again. How many black people, so-called black people, do they name in this video? It's fucking ridiculous. And like I said, and then they said, oh yeah, anyway, you know what I'm saying. I don't have to go into it. So the story behind this was the young lady who's connected to that Full House lady, is stupid in so many ways. But yeah, her name is Olivia J, obviously, so her initials are OJ. She goes to USC, which OJ Simpson went to USC. But think about this. Of all the stories, this is my point, of all the stories that HBO, look at all the resources that HBO has. Look at all the resources that John Oliver has with a Grammy Award winning show. I think multi-Grammy Award, not Grammy. Is it Grammy? No, not Grammy. What's the Golden Globe? Yeah. I think I said Grammy earlier too. Multi-Golden Globe or whatever the hell the TV shows win. They won those awards on purpose. It's the same way, because it's the same way Barack Obama was, won the Nobel Peace, supposedly won the Nobel Peace Prize 9 months into his first year. Because they want you to follow these people. That's why these fake ass awards exist in the first place. So back to the whole point of this public shaming shit. Like I said, white people, so-called white people, it's the narrative. And like I said, when I mention white people, I'm talking about the macro existence of white people. The macro white people that don't talk about how fucked up so-called white people have been and still are. And that truth is taboo. They will never talk about that. Only talk about how bad so-called black people are. This is the point I'm trying to make. It's taboo to talk about how fucked up white people are, but it's mainstream normalized to talk about how fucked up so-called black people are and non-white people are. That's the point. That's the macro public shaming that will never be talked about. Even in your fucking truther communities, they won't talk about this shit. That's what irritates me so much. And they still get in the comment section, talking their shit about how you're messed up or whatever. And day after day after day after day, still, truther community still silent for the most part on this shit. It's fucking disgusting. So, to close this all out, they go through all of this. And to prep for their Monica Lewinsky interview, they got to talk about how fucked up so-called black people are again. They mention OJ again with that lady, with her. So yeah, they did that because she goes to USC. OJ went to USC. She's on YouTube and she's too dumb to realize the OJ USC connection, but they didn't care about that. They just they found another opportunity through comedy. Oh, this is just comedy. This has no real intention to make melanated people look dirty and drug addicts and violent and stupid and rapists and all that other shit. See, Trump just said out loud Mexicans are rapists and criminals. He said it. It came out of his mouth like that. People like John Oliver and the mainstream media as a whole, they just don't use those words. They embody that spirit. That's the point. Trump, like these individuals that he's demonizing, is being demonized because he's placed out there to be demonized, to make people like John Oliver and other people like who are in that midstream Western consciousness, make them seem comfortable, make them seem less insecure about their criminal nature, about their criminal normalized reality. This is why late night talk shows, Joe Rogan, Owen Benjamin, Alex Jones, all these comedians. This is why comedy is coming up big time in society right now, especially during the political scene. Even now you see Rosario Dawson, who's I think she's she was heavy duty with Bernie Sanders. At that time she was dating what's the dude from Adult Swim? Anyway, he's a comedian who was interacting with Alex Jones. Coincidentally, at one time, when he went out to the Republican convention or something like that. Eric Andre is his name. So Rosario Dawson, who was a heavy pusher for Bernie Sanders, was dating Eric Andre, who is now dating Booker something, whatever that Booker guy's name is in Hollywood, who's running for president, Hollywood, who's in politics. Something Booker, whatever Booker. He's a so-called black politician. She's dating him now. So you can see the merge between Hollywood and politics and so on and so forth, and how that whole thing works. Anyway, you'll see how all this stuff plays out later on. Meanwhile, like all these people are selling, these white people, so-called white people, are selling makeup to make them look darker. So they're talking about people, how fucked up, you know, brown, darker people are, and killing them off in the first movies, and making millions and millions of dollars off makeup that makes them look darker, that makes them look like the people that they're killing. The fuck, man, this is the most fucked up shit ever. So the victim that they used as an example of public shaming is Monica Lewinsky, and how could anybody argue with that? Obviously, you know, that's their main thing, selling you things that you. How the fuck can you argue with that? Like, who's gonna argue against the fucked up things that, you know, O.J. Simpson has done, or the fucked up thing? Like, who's gonna argue at how ridiculous Jussie Smollett is? Obviously, it's an easy thing, but it comes to a point to where you're saying, like, okay, you know, talk about it, but talk about the cancer. Bring about the cancer. Bring that to the surface. See, these assholes, they make their money off of this is a cancer industry. John Oliver, he works for the psychological cancer industry. Joe Rogan, Owen Benjamin, Alex Jones, the mainstream media, Hollywood, politicians, they work for the psychological, spiritual, and physical cancer-causing industry. And in order to do that, you know, it's kind of like lobbyists. They are lobbyists for the cancer-causing industry. And if you're a lobbyist for a cancer-causing industry, are you going to wear a jacket that says lobbyist for cancer-causing industry? No. You have to play yourself out to be a victim. So they say, yeah, people who are against cancer-causing products are such and such and such and such, and they're doing this, and they're always attacking us, and poor old us, we're being attacked, and we're just trying to provide a non-cancer-causing, but it is causing cancer-causing product to you. Don't you like McDonald's? Don't you like Walmart? You know what I'm saying? So they have to play that victim, but they also have to play like they're your savior. And also they have to play like anything that you're making, like cancer-causing corporation products, are the best thing. They are the evolved thing of reality. So like the psychological cancer-causing reactions to the Greco-Roman Empire are accepted as normal. So when you, like the same way, like when you don't react to, or when you don't play like the gay jokes with so-called white people, like they like just talking all the time, like if you don't participate in it, it makes them feel insecure now. So what do they have to do about that insecurity? They have to make you feel insecure. So they say, oh, well, I'm just really secure with my masculinity, which is inherently saying that you are insecure about your masculinity because you don't play the gay jokes thing. No, that is a reaction to the Greco-Roman culture that has been accepted for many generations. It's a cultural thing that is a part of your culture that's not a part of our culture. And it's largely a part of their culture because they have been reacting to that. That's their power. Their power is in the empire. It's not in the essence of the individual. See, that's the difference between so-called the New World Empire externalized power grid and the old ancestral interpretations of who and what we are. Our power comes from the inside. This is why we still have a connection with nature. The New World externalized Greco-Roman Empire. I'll just use it as an example of like the separation from the original. That power comes from external stuff like the maritime admiralty system, the straw man, the like the fake authority, that comes from the university system, so-called intellect, the fake authority that comes from Western so-called civilization, the fake authority that comes from the police state of the world, people like the policemen of the world, the so-called United States. That's a fake power. It was made from, you know, not organic actions. There's nothing organic. There's no. It's forced. It's forced power, and we all know that forced power is not real power. Forced power is synthetic. But since forced power has been the main power for so long, people now think and have to accept that forced power is real power. So this is why people like Joe Rogan have to talk about the glory of Rome all the time. They have to overemphasize how great this country, the Make America Great Again. That's the celebration of forced power. And that power is being pushed by the pushers to as long as possible, so that eventually you can start thinking and believing that forced power is equal to organic power. That's why you have this genetically modified shit and all this other stuff. No. That forced power will never be equivalent to the natural power that's inherent within us, ever. So this is why I'm saying it's so important to address this, the foundations of this cancer-causing corporation empire. Until then, you're just talking shit. You know, people are just selling the Bible. Oh, your answers are in the Bible. Get the fuck out of here with all this shit, man. Like, where did your power come from? Where did your power come from before some asshole wrote any book? Where's your meaning and your purpose before somebody had to write down a curriculum of how your spirit should live in this reality? Get the fuck out of here with all this Bible shit, man. This shit's ridiculous. All that shit is so fucked up. It's an extension. It's an extension of that privileged nature. Like that whole, like, oh, we're better. We're so good. Well, even our fucking religion is better than you. Our books are better than you. Our intellect is better than you. Our food is better than you. Our civilization is better than you. In fact, you're just primitive, savage, beastly nothings. Get the fuck. That's what they're saying every day with their arrogant ass TV shows. And then in order to keep you from calling them on their shit, they have to victimize themselves. So this is why they have to put Monica Lewinsky out here. So I think that's it. I think that's it for the. So here is another. You know, these arrogant, once caught arrogant like pieces of shit. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. I've said it over and over again. Public shaming. Yeah, this is Jay Leno. So they're doing the intro to victimizing themselves through showing an interview with Monica Lewinsky. I was wondering why this video was so long, because how much could they talk about, you know, public shaming? But it's because the rest of the video is. So the first half, which was their normal style of TV show about public shaming, was just the introduction. It was the prep to go into the interview with Monica Lewinsky. And then boom, there you go. She's a victim. And it's funny but not funny. And we should not do this. And this ties into the bullying thing. So this ties into, for kids, you know, if this doesn't affect you directly, then it affects you because you have kids, and kids have to deal with bullying, and bullying is public shaming. So this is just a grown-up version of bullying. So this is another way of making you think that they are, you know, I said it over and over again. I think that's it. So they just played this interview to show how, like, of a real person, regular person, Monica Lewinsky is. But like I said before, they do this with people like Monica Lewinsky. They have to over-humanize so-called white people. This is the thing. Like, this is why you're inundated with so-called white people in Hollywood. It's because you have to be overly convinced that they are normal. Like, I'm not saying that they're abnormal, like, across the board. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that there are things that so-called white people have to deal with, like that is natural, or not natural, but that is within their culture and now their beingness, that is accepted, that is not universal and is fucked up in many different ways and is being played. See, this is why I get so irritated many different ways with so-called white people, especially in the truther community, is because the truther community and so-called white people as a whole are being played. They're being played, and they call themselves truthers, and they don't even, and they have to act like they don't see this shit. They have to act like they don't see that, you know, they are being used to victimize the empire. This is what gets me. And they call themselves truthers. So, like I said, when I mention white people, I'm talking about the macro, the culture, like the white privilege, the white supremacy, so on and so forth, that's accepted on the largest scale to the smallest scale, on the macro. That's what I'm talking about in this whole video, and I'm referencing. And I will talk about that for as long as I have to, because I'm talking about it in more so than so-called white people are. And this is not my fucking responsibility. This is a responsibility of your fucking people. You should have, the internet should be inundated with so-called white people talking about, like, what is that? Disavowing the mainstream media. When the fuck will so-called white people disavow this system and disavow this victimization? When the fuck will that happen? It's not happening because of the privilege that comes from that system, because of the mind controls, because a lot of them are still protecting this system. And like I said, this is a macro adjustment. I know that there are some, that there's a difference between the individual and like the culture itself. I understand that. It's the same way that, you know, the LGBTQ is being used. Like, do I like have a thing against, you know, gay people? No, of course not. But they are being used. They are being used to push an agenda. The same way so-called white people are being used to push an agenda. And since it's benefiting them, they're not saying anything about it. And since they're not saying anything about it, they are actually, in not saying something about it, they are actually saying something about it. In not saying something about it, they are saying something about it. And they are simultaneously telling us about it. So fuck you for saying what you're saying about it by not saying anything about it. Fuck you over and over and over again. Because for all those other videos that I've said the same thing over and over again, all the years, all those years, all these last few years, going on 4 years now that I was calling out Mark and Patricia in the so-called truther flat earth community, 4 years, and all the followers that have been following her and all that other shit, and them and all that other shit. 4 years I've been saying this shit over and over and over again. And I'm just one of the latest ones. People have been saying this for decades before me. But for the last 4 years, with the internet, with the online social media community, with all this shit, 4 years I've been saying this. Not a fucking word. On the whole, the tides haven't changed. They've only shifted to a thing, but they've been avoiding all this shit. These people have been avoiding this shit. I'm going to start going harder now because this is my last video talking to people in this light, this way. From now on, I'm going to be calling out all the people who are avoiding this shit. Calling out, like, not individually the people, but the atmosphere of avoidance. You are a part of a culture of avoidance that benefits your privileged ass. And I say that not as a hatred or a slight against you, but to emphasize, as you are being privileged over and over and over again, your silence is adding up to the death and destruction of our people. You, as a minority across the whole fucking world, you're protecting your privilege and protecting the empire. You might not even be aware of it. 1/10 of the people protecting their privilege around the world is adding up to the death, homicide, genocide, murder, the poisoning of the people around the world. And they're not saying anything about it. They've invented this entire truth culture, this entire truth community that is devoid of the truth of this cancer that I mentioned in this video. They made a whole community, a whole so-called truth culture, a truth community that is devoid, that is missing one of the biggest truths out there. And one of the most empowering perspectives that you can come from. They made a whole community. The whole truther community has been duped. It's all been compromised from the get-go. And this is why, to protect this shit. And like I said in the last video, if your truth is on Netflix, you don't have truth anymore. You don't have a truth. So this is the thing. If your truther community, the truther community it itself is, like, in quotation marks, on Netflix. It's compromised because it's based upon limitations. I'm going to leave it here. I've said enough. This was what I really wanted to get out. This is I don't have to say anything else. I'm going to be watching these YouTube channels for like I've been watching over the last few years. This is why I don't really interact with a lot of YouTube channels or all this. I'll go in and out here and there, just on some like quick little subjects or stuff like that. But you know, a lot of other people in many different ways, when they don't talk about this information, they're basically saying, you know, fuck you, you're wrong, something's wrong with you. You know, like, so not everybody, not all of them are saying that, but, you know, if they're saying it like that, and, you know, I don't even want to be, you know, affiliated with people like that. Because you never know, they could be protecting, doing the same thing. If they're not talking about it, how is that any different from talking about information that protects it? It's the same thing. You're protecting it. It's about the protection of it. See, John Oliver is out there to protect that system with information that distracts you from the system. How is that different from talking about other truths that also distract you from the system? It's the same thing. It's the same effect. You're missing the main point that will empower you and simultaneously attack the system. This is why the truth community is full of shit. And this is why all these labels are full of shit. People need these childhood labels and all this. I'm going to leave it here. I'm done with this. Public shaming, John Oliver. I think I broke that down enough. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the support. Until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.